And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother to the temple, the madman behind many, many, many projects in the Era universe, and now expanding in that universe with the return of the Era Zone for Zine Quest, this time covering more prototype games, currently at $666 raised. Yes, I had to make the joke. the one and only Ed Jowett. How you doing, Ed? And welcome back. I appreciate you doing this so late at night for you. And
it's a pleasure to be back. Mm-hmm. It's always good to try things at different times of day because you'll get different answers out of me based on how tired I am. Mm-hmm. So I don't drink, right? But I do get tired, mm-hmm. And believe me, it can be near enough.
Yeah. Well, I do remember when I was very young seeing a study about sleepy drivers being not far removed from somebody who is intoxicated. There was a massive crackdown of that about I want to say 15 years ago.
Tiredness kills. Yeah. Here too, on this side as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I'm back. I actually think this project is one of the most appropriate for your stated goal of seeking enlightenment. Mm-hmm. This is Zine Quest. Mm-hmm. It's the Era Zone, and if you don't mind, I'll spend 1 minute just talking about how the Era Zone started.
Yeah, let's set the stage before we get into the meat and potatoes.
Absolutely. So the Era Zone was my response to the very first Zine Quest, mm-hmm. which was raised in a February, some years ago now, 2020, 2019, 2019 maybe? 2019. Mm-hmm. So I thought, right, I can do a zine where it's like stuff. There's stuff for every one of my era games, and at the time I think there were, I don't know, maybe 8. As you know, there are now more like 15. But I did campaigns, and I did characters, and I did optional objectives for Era Hitman, optional targets, and I did characters and short stories and new powers for Era the Empowered and various other bits and pieces. And that's what the first few years of the Era Zone were like. And then as my number of games grew, because obviously I was still working alongside this, this is not the only thing, mm-hmm. I gradually realized that what I really wanted to do with the Era Zone was explore the idea of, here's a game, now it's not quite done, But if you want to be the first person who sees the thing I'm trying to do, this is the place where you see that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was received really well. It was I got a lot of support, as I am now. I'm very pleased with the level of support that we're getting. And I delivered Era Dragon Song as a prototype. I delivered Era Bloodlines as a prototype, and I delivered Era Friction as a prototype. Now, the following year was actually the first creative prompt that I have not done anything with. Because they moved it from February to August, which I was not able to do. I had other stuff planned. It just didn't happen in February. No word, no warning, no nothing. So I've not done a zine quest in a little while. Not since 2022 question mark?
23.
23 for Bloodlines.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do one in 2024 because of that move in the year. So I'm back now for 2025. I've got loads of really cool ideas that I want to bring to life. I will bring them to life.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened with Era Dragon Song and Era Friction, of the three that I've mentioned, is I got so much feedback that people love these games that I decided to actually push forward and publish those games. And we've actually spoken, I believe, about both of those two games.
Yes.
We've never spoken about Era Bloodlines because it was actually a custom game that was funded by a backer. It's one of our backer tiers.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had 2 pledges on that tier for this year's one. And what the backer asked for was an urban fantasy in the vein of Buffy or Grimm or Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some research. I actually watched all of Grimm, which was pretty grim. It started so promisingly and then went downhill very fast.
I have a small bit of beef with Grimm and the fact that its insistence on being around as long as it was probably one of the things that killed off the Constantine series, which was really, really good.
It was good. The other thing about Grimm is the ending was bad. It was objectively one of those things that you teach writers not to ever do ever.
Okay, on a scale from 1 to Lost, how bad are we talking?
Not far from Lost.
Ouch. That's
It was spoilers
Mm-hmm.
for a series that ended 10 years ago.
Statutes pass and you can't spoil something that's already rotten.
It was an unhappening ending. So everyone dies in the second to last episode, and then it unhappens by the last episode. By the end of the last episode, everyone comes back to life again.
Oh, fuck off.
It was just here's the big bad, he kills everyone, the end of the second to last episode. Apart from the main character who survives. Or does he die and get transferred into... I can't remember, honestly. It was a couple of years ago now. But it was an unhappening ending. He killed everyone, and then everyone got unkilled.
Yeah. As a general rule, whenever I see that sort of mass resurrection like that or magic reset button, the vein starts popping up my head.
It was this guy died, so his time stream never existed, so undo everything. It was like...
Yeah, that kind of thing gets the vein popping, gets the blood vessel going.
I mean, if you want to do a Groundhog Day episode, cause and effect in Star Trek: The Next Generation, or whatever, if you want to do an episode of that, then fine, right? That's a thing. It's a fun trope. It's fun to play with. Yeah, I get that. to make it the climax of your TV series and the last episode where you just undo everything one time because you killed everyone off to get their attention, to get people's attention. I mean, that's the kind of thing I would teach a writer to not do.
Yeah, one of my old writers back in college would probably have a profanity laden field day with that kind of thing, and they were the.
It was a little disappointing when I got to the end of Grimm, especially given the first like 3 episodes were really quite promising, and then beyond that it was just awful.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it just went from bad to worse, and the end was But anyway, I did my duty.
Yeah.
I learned all about what this guy liked. I'm not sure he liked the end of Grimm. Like, he never said that specifically. He just cited it as a specific thing. And actually, one of the people who's pledged for the custom prototype has bounced a few ideas off me. I don't know what he's going to write in his survey in 2 weeks when this Kickstarter ends. But one of the things he suggested was a Pokemon-esque kind of monster catcher. Which I think I'm prepared for. I think I could do it. I think I know how I'd approach it. So that might be what we get. It might not. It's really up to those 2 people, which is why it very clearly sort of talks about 2 custom issues and then Era Solmist. Era Solmist is unlocked. There will be a prototype for it. I'm really excited to put Era Solmist into practice. It's not perfect yet. I'm not going to pretend it is. But it's good enough to give you a prototype of what I'm thinking and why it's going to be interesting.
Oh yeah. And speaking of, this is as good a time as any to transition into the prototypes that are on the list, especially on the Kickstarter. And the first one is one that I do recall you hinting at and dropping some notes about to me over the last few years, and that is Soul Mist, which was something that you were kicking around for a few years about doing a Souls-like take on Era.
Yeah. And
I think one of the first things to kind of touch on with that is which Souls games in particular are you drawing from? Because we've had quite a few now, and each of them is doing its own little variation on the motif. So it's important to nail that kind of thing down.
Era Souls is very heavily Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. It's not Demon Souls. It's not Bloodborne. It's not Elden Ring. It's got some similarities to Elden Ring because all of those games have some similarities to each other. I'd say it's least like Bloodborne of the FromSoft FromSoft games. I'd say it's least like Bloodborne. However, really, Dark Souls 2 are my main playbook because they're the 2 Dark Souls games I've played most recently. Thanks to remastering that's been going on recently.
Yeah.
And it's aiming to bring you that experience in a game.
And obviously the combat system in Era is whether it be the full Era or light is very light in terms of the action economy, and in order to make every move count, obviously that had to be addressed. So how do you plan on addressing that so that it carries some of the feel of a Souls-like?
The combat system is having a complete overhaul. One of the things that I have as a complaint about role-playing games that have tried to do Souls-like is when you're playing a Souls game, you are thinking every moment, am I going to attack? Am I going to dodge? What choice am I making here?
Mm-hmm.
You can dodge into an enemy's attack because you screwed up. That happens often enough, to me anyway. You can attack in a moment where you really should have dodged. Or you can get it right, obviously. So there is now a stamina bar, and you do not roll every turn. You roll at the beginning of combat for how powerful your attack is. And if you want to re-roll it, that takes your combat turn.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to attack. That allows you to count for a bad roll, you know? Like if you get a really bad roll, you aren't stuck with that for the entire combat.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose to re-roll. And then every turn, I've actually been using colored dice. So a red dice, a green dice, a yellow dice. A red dice is an attack. And you have a little, on your character sheet, or I've done it with a whiteboard type thing on the table as well. You have a number of slots equal to your stamina. You add a red dice if you do an attack, a yellow dice if you do call it an Estus flask, basically. And a green dice if you're dodging out the way. Once your stamina bar is full, you miss your next turn to clear off your stamina bar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every enemy acts in a similar way. Rather than rolling at the beginning of combat, they just have a set amount of damage they do with their attacks. So it varies.
And I suppose that's a way to make it easier when handling multiple combatants, which is always one of the trickiest parts of Souls-like, because everybody has some bit of rent-free in their head regarding the fight with Ornstein and Smog.
Ornstein and Smog, not the worst part of that game, in my opinion.
No.
Running up the rampart to get to Ornstein and Smog, on the other hand.
Yeah.
I think that was before Ornstein and Smog.
Yeah, I just used that boss fight as a representative of kind of your final test.
So every enemy has like a sequence of moves they do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they attack, dodge, attack, massive AoE attack, dodge, heal, attack.
Mm-hmm.
For example, right? And that's what they'll do in that sequence. But the players won't know it before the fight starts with this enemy. Right? So simple enemies will just attack.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's all they do. You know, your basic undead Berg zombies will just attack. Right? They won't dodge, they won't try and get out of the way, they'll just do stupid stuff. Whereas, you know, the more advanced enemies will do a much more complicated sequence, a longer sequence, with a sequence designed to throw you off and make you dodge when you should be attacking, and vice versa.
Yeah, I can get that. Now, the Souls games are particularly famous for the multi-phase setup when it comes to boss fights.
Yeah.
Within Era Soul Mist, do you plan on carrying something similar to that, and how?
So at the moment, I don't have any specific enemies that I have playtested that have multiple phases, but I know exactly how I would do it. And the answer is, your first phase is this sequence. Your second phase, you look like this instead. Oh, the enemy looks like this instead, and it's this sequence.
Mm-hmm.
The third phase is this sequence, and so on, right? You just change up the sequence. You might change up the amount of damage it does, or change down the amount of damage it does, just to throw them off. You know, you make it tougher but reduce the amount of damage, so it's a different experience fighting phases of the boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to, would advancement be on a similar level setup, or is that getting changed due to the nature of the subject matter?
That's one of the things I'm still on the fence on. At the moment, I think it is very likely that what I will do is have in the prototype a standard leveling system. I am seriously considering something more akin to what I did in Era Lost Legends, but that might be too far, you know? Where you've got that enormous web. I think that's probably too far to go. I think I think the right thing to do for Era Soul Mist is likely to be what Dark Souls does, which is you need a certain number of souls to level up, and that number of souls increases as you level up. Now, I don't know that the numbers are going to be as enormous as they can be in Dark Souls. You could easily take a 0 off and make no practical difference. A 0 of souls, number of souls off, at the entire way through and make no practical difference. You just get 5 souls instead of 50 from a small enemy.
Oh yeah, I can.
Or 1 instead of 10, or whatever.
Yeah, I can certainly get that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That's not me ragging on FromSoft. It's just a case of it makes no mathematical difference, and when you're working with a pen and paper, it's much harder to keep track of very large numbers.
Yeah. Now, since you brought up Dark Souls 1 and 2 as one of your primary leanings, that does kind of answer one of the questions I had considered for a moment. Because with Dark Souls 3, and then to a certain extent with Elden Ring, the idea of weapon-specific techniques or equipment-specific techniques started to emerge. You know, in Dark Souls 3, you had the whole concept of weapon arts. In Elden Ring, you have the Ashes of War. And I was going to ask if that was something you had considered, but since you're leaning more towards the first two, that's not really gonna be a priority, it sounds like.
It's not a priority. I think you can over mechanicalness a game. That's not a word, but it should be. I think you can make the game overly mechanically complicated for no real benefit. I want you to have a different feeling if you're using my favorite weapon in Dark Souls 1 and 2, the Battle Axe, versus a greatsword, versus an ultra greatsword, versus a pair of daggers.
Yeah.
But I don't want the pair of daggers to be crap. I want them to be different. Right? Yeah. The way that I'm approaching that at the moment is a multiplier. So you roll a much smaller number of dice. It's much harder to get a good result. You know, it's harder to damage. My damage and kill threshold mechanics, which you're familiar with from era games, they're staying in place. But daggers get a multiplier because you stab more quickly. So in one attack, you might get 2 times whatever your result is.
Oh yeah.
Whereas with an ultra greatsword, you might get half whatever your result is, but that's okay because you're going to have a very easy time getting good successes.
That idea of a high ceiling but harder to have it consistently.
Yeah, exactly so.
Yeah, I can get that. Especially since it allows one to kind of have an equivalent to what poise is in the video games proper.
Yeah, poise is one of those things that it works really well as part of a computer game and works horribly as on a pen and paper game, to be going, right, well, after every single thing you do, you have to think about your poise. It's like, I will hate every second of what I have to do if I have to think about that all of the time.
Yeah.
It's a thing that's nearly irrelevant to the actual functional gameplay, and it's something that you optimize when you are an expert at the mechanics of the game and you want to do really good PvP in the game itself. You can get through the whole game never paying attention to poise.
Yeah. And
like you really can. Like the whole PvE of the game, you can get through all of it, never even thinking about poise or being aware of it.
yeah, and it's well known that PvP in Dark Souls is perfectly balanced with no exploits whatsoever.
Comments. No comment. I'm not focusing on the PvP aspect
Yeah.
of Dark Souls within this role-playing game.
Yeah,
that won't surprise you. I'm not big on PvP and role-playing games in the general sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a group experience, and it should not be primarily balanced around PvP.
But
with paranoia being a notable exception.
Yeah, because that's kind of the point. But
it's kind of the point.
But when it comes now, even with that, it sounds to me that when it comes to enemy encounters within Era Solomist, they're operating on a kind of, for lack of a better term, soft AI, in terms of with an emphasis on patterns.
Yeah, it's funny actually. When I was at university a couple of years ago, I worked on AI in computer games as my dissertation. And I learned about defined finite automatons and how they work and how they're used. And in a sense, this is a dumber version than that. Because the enemies will just do their thing no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you figure out the sequence, you will be God mode against this enemy.
Which is certainly in keeping with the source material, because all of the Souls games beat you over the head with the biggest mallet in the universe. Learn the damn patterns.
It's work it out, player, and you will get it. You will be able to play.
Mm-hmm.
But until you work it out, you are going to hate it.
Yeah.
You need to know block at this point, dodge at this point. This is your window for attacking. Unless you're fighting the Rotten, in which case you just run around behind it, summon as many friends as possible, and let them tank it while you stab it in the back lots.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I can certainly get that. And I'm guessing much like with Londo, the city of Mull is separated into different zones with different themes.
Absolutely.
Which, whenever I see that kind of thing,
I've got a map here. I was just going to pull it up actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is my video being shared? Can I share a map?
No.
That work?
No. I never share video.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, people will have to have a look at the prototype to find it, but let me pull up the map and tell you a few of the areas that are in it if I can find the map. It's around here somewhere. There it is. Okay, let me have a look. I've got some of these places do have slightly crappy names still. I haven't worked it entirely out yet. Wow, the volcano is on this version. It's still called the lava place, which is definitely not right. I fixed that. But yeah, there's Mull, there's Lowtown, there's Flooded Lowtown, which is Mull is shaped like an N almost. There's an inlet, a harbor that goes all the way into Mull. Lowtown is on one side of that N, and Flooded Lowtown is the other side. And Flooded Lowtown has actually been taken over by another thing. Like, yes, people are coming back as undead, but also those undead are being possessed by some kind of demonic creature. And Flooded Lowtown is its whole own thing. There's the cathedral. There's a palace that's some distance away from Old Mull, the old city. There's the Great Library. There's Exiled Dragon Valley, like the Veil of Dragons, basically, but my own take on it.
Yeah.
There's a swamp, there's lookout towers, which are a bit like the belfries. There's an underground Blighttown-esque area. There's a catacombs area that's a bit like the Rat Royalty. I forget what that area is actually called. Grave of Saints.
Yeah.
Grave of Saints in number 2. So yeah, there are lots of different sort of places. They're mostly evocative of something in Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2. There are my favorite area in Dark Souls 2, which is the more recent game I played, is actually the Harvest Peak. That's what it's called. That's my favorite area in the game. I love the environment there. I think it's a lot of fun. So I included like a mountainous area with quarries and such. And there are a lot of places to explore within the peninsula, which is where Mol is based. And we've got we've got an underground Kiln of the First Flame kind of area where you can get to as a lost boss bit. I've drawn a little on Bloodborne to make the really big enemies. The last boss of Bloodborne was definitely an influence on my sort of my deity kind of enemies. The real last boss, not the semi-last boss.
Oh yeah.
The Luna, I can't remember what it's called. Sorry. Names. First thing to go.
Oh yeah. And I know how that goes. But
My name again?
yeah. With that said, I did want to touch a little bit on the stretch goals that you do have. Starting with Era Crueltide.
Era Crueltide was a bit of fun, and I just thought last year I saw the trailer only for the movie Red 1. The one with The Rock and Chris Evans in it.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, not a bad idea for like a world. I'm sure they'll do a Christmas movie with it, I wouldn't do that. But the idea that there's just like all of these in the trailer, you see like the bit where he walks through the where Chris Evans' character with The Rock walks through like the place where they're taking everyone. So they've got the headless horseman, and they've got the head in a box, and the horse is going nuts, and this sort of thing. And I just thought that would be a lot of fun. And then I just got this idea about Christmas seems to start earlier every year, and I just thought, wouldn't it be hilarious if this world exists, but the creatures kind of rely on the holidays to give them their power? So then I came up with this idea, well, Halloween is the thing most likely to be affected by Christmas, because in this country we don't celebrate Thanksgiving the way that you guys do, but Halloween is the most likely thing going to be affected by Christmas. It does feel like you get decorations up in October in some places, and you're like, come on, seriously? So I just thought, what if the jack-o'-lanterns were scared that Halloween was going to get taken over by Christmas? And what if, because they're not very mobile, what if they... What if they convince everyone that, we're first, but you're next? and so they persuade the Chinese Lunar New Year dragon to help them, and they persuade the Easter Bunny to help them, and you name it, right? Leprechauns or whatever. I've been criticised over leprechauns St. Patrick's Day, but I ran with it anyway because this is a jokey game. It's not serious.
Yeah.
It was an Irish person specifically who lives in Ireland who criticised me on that one. I said, it's an Irish thing, and they're Irish. I'm just running with it. So, I just thought that would be really fun. And then imagine the snowmen are so dumb that they're promised by the jack-o'-lanterns that they'll never melt if they work with the jack-o'-lanterns. Right? We'll find you a place in the Arctic. You'll be safe all year round. And I thought, what do snowmen want more than anything? To exist, probably, right? So that snowman that you're looking at in the little image there, that is elf blood all over his face because they've been eating the elves. In this image, there's a terrified elf just at the bottom of this. It's designed as an A4 image, and you're mostly seeing the sort of the middle to top bit.
Right.
And yeah, basically there's this elf like cowering behind a snowdrift trying to hide from the snowman. So yeah, basically the snowmen came in, kidnapped Santa Claus. And you can be a magical creature, you can be a human who's given Christmas magic, and you have to try to rescue Santa. Is kind of the way the game's set up. It's supposed to be like a fun little thing that you could play other things, but it's really about rescuing Santa in time for Christmas. And every spell is a silly Christmas pun. I went online and found every Christmas pun I could. Oh, that's a bit odd. What's happened there? So, for example, snow fast, snow good. Or snow problem. Or the way the cookie crumbles. Or you'll be sorry, as in YULE. It's intended to be ridiculous. It's a lot of fun. It's very silly. I ran it for Christmas briefly, like a very preliminary version. And I thought, you know what? It's fun enough. But I could not have got it done in time for Christmas last year. So I thought, okay, fine. I'll sit on this. I'll wait until like November next year and get it out for Christmas so that people can play it at Christmas. But in the meantime, why not send out a nice little fun thing as part of the Era Zone? I think it'll be a good thing to do. It'll be nice, interesting, and I wouldn't say unique exactly, but it's not a thing that you see super commonly.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get behind that. And moving from that, one of the other stretch goals that you have is Era Kumite. I'd like to hear on that a bit.
Era Kumite is an idea I had, and Leo is once again responsible, because Leo is always responsible. My good friend Leo Kosh has a tendency to say, you couldn't make a role-playing game out of that. And I have a tendency to respond, hang on 1 minute. I thought for Era Kumite that it would be fun to... I love 90s movies, particularly action movies. Bloodsport and The Quest, obviously both very heavily influenced by the same person. both starring the same actor and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you know what? It's kind of fun, and why not have problems on and off the ring, the stage, whatever you're going to call it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who are trying to cheat by blowing a blow dart into one of the competitors. You know, that's the thing that actually came up in the Babylon 5 episode, that is basically the quest or Bloodsport.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, let's do that. So I started thinking, okay, well, what do you need in your crew? You need someone with the talkie skills, right? You need someone who's like the trainer, the grizzled older guy who's training you to be better and keeping you going when you're losing and whatever. You know, Rocky style, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need the person who's gonna run around the outside and deck the guy. He's not the fighter, but he's gonna deck the guy who's trying to cheat. Those are definitely like tropes of a person, and I reckon that you can write a pretty fun session by leaning into those tropes. You know, by having everyone can have something to do within the tournaments. People can try and cheat in various different ways, so you have to stop them in different ways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to have the guy who talks you out of the fight that you might get into outside the ring, and therefore both get disqualified or whatever, and so on and so on and so on. So this is kind of the idea behind Ira Kumite, and it's called that obviously in reference to Bloodsport directly. And you know, one of the big challenges there is going to be making sure that it's not all about the fight, because the other characters have to do something as well. I don't want this to be main character syndrome. So the fighter will pretty much be dumb as a bag of rocks and not able to do all the things that Jean-Claude Van Damme's character does in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to split that out a bit more.
Yeah.
But the Roger Moore kind of character from the quest, that character's going to stay. That's going to be there. Whether it's the one with the gift of the gap, or whether it's the, you know, like the Larcenous thief or whatever, that character's going to stay.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to Kumite, do you see that being more of an Era Light system, or do you see that being a full Era system?
Undecided at this point. It's one of those games that sort of sat on my list for about 3 years, and I've gone backwards and forwards. When I started, there was no doubt in my mind it would not be light. Now, I'm less sure.
Mm-hmm.
When Light came out, I was positive it was going to be light. I don't know. I think it could go either way, and I think it would be valid to go either way. I think that when I actually get to making this game, I will make a decision, but it's unlikely I'm going to make one before that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And of course, when it comes to one of the other ones that's in the stretch goal list, Era Biopunk, I remember when I looked at that, for whatever reason, I kept getting the manga Blame popping up in the back of my head. Blame by Tsutomu Nihei.
So as you know, I am not very big into anime and manga, so I'm going to have to admit I have no idea what that is, and I know nothing about it. However, Leo, who I mentioned earlier, actually came to me during COVID and said, Ed, I would like to make a role-playing game. And I said, sure, fine, let's do that. And we've been working on it for a couple of years now, since COVID, off and on.
Mm-hmm.
And Era Biopunk is that game. Leo is much more into manga and anime than I am, and he may well know, and may well be influenced by blame. I truly don't know.
Yeah.
What I can say is the era biopunk combines some of what I think are the best elements of Eclipse phase, and games like Deus Ex. You play as two characters at the same time. You play as a pillar who is a humanoid with an implanted set of technology that means they can control another body to implement a Cold War. Again, there are sort of two main factions, and there's a big Cold War going on where they'll go and sort of bomb each other and fight each other, but not directly. And they'll make it look like other people are doing it, and so on. And you control these. There are, I think I want to say there are 10 varieties of, we call them subsids. And you know, there are some which are talky, and there are some which are fighty, and there are some which can smuggle weapons past metal detectors because they make weapons out of bone from their hand. Kind of Existence, if you've seen that movie.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, kind of that bone gun that they have, that kind of thing. The idea is that you play as this pillar as your primary character, and the subsids might die. They might die a lot. But if they die succeeding in the mission, then you've done an okay thing and it doesn't matter. It's a bit of a meat grinder, and that's just the way it is. So it's going to be about like going into missions, and dealing with this Cold War situation. That's what the book's all about. I thought it would be really nice to get a prototype out there and generate some interest. Leo and I have been working on this for a while, and he's very sure of what he wants in the world. So I'm there and I'm doing world building and helping and so on. But he definitely has the style in mind for what he wanted. And I thought it would be nice to put Era Biopunk up as a thing that if we reach it, we will do a prototype for it. And that might make both of us just push that whole project forwards a bit. Because actually that project is artwork complete. It's just not written entirely yet. And that's what's holding it up.
And one of the other things that you're doing with this particular crowdfund is essentially catch up for previous issues of prototypes. And what prompted that?
I thought it would be a really nice gesture to say, hey, maybe we have published Era Dragon Song, maybe we have published Era Friction, and obviously we spoke earlier about Era Bloodlines fairly extensively. Each of these have cool things for the Era D10 rule set, and some people, I'm under no illusion, some people don't like playing whatever is provided. They want to homebrew their own thing, but they want the tools to do that, and to do it well and easily. And I think that for that reason, the Era Zone catch-ups are actually quite good for those people. That's why I chose to do that. I thought, you know what, if you don't want to go out and spend Era Dragon Song would be, I don't know, £10, and Era Friction £10, and Era Bloodlines maybe 25 quid. But you also would like to have the new stuff, and you know, I thought I can do this for a much smaller amount of money on the basis that I have a couple of issues of these hanging around anyway. You know, they're left over, and I've not sold them all or given them all away. I've got a few of them. Why not just go, okay, guys, you can have a copy of this if you're interested. And there's a small amount of interest in it. And that means, in my opinion, that I've done my job here. You know, I never expected everyone to be going for it. I expected most people to be more interested in the new stuff that I've got coming, which is very much reflected by what's happened on the rewards. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely something I can particularly get behind, since obviously it's been a while since those prototypes, so
Hmm.
having a bit of throwing people a bone is certainly going to be not certainly going to be
It,
nice.
it it does. They are not much changed for Dragon Song and Friction in terms of the actual mechanics that are described.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I'm going, yeah, well, you've got an old version of the rules there and it's totally different now. I feel like I'm going, yeah, you know what, it's pretty close. There might be a few tweaks here and there, but it's really pretty close. If you're looking for the principle of what's going on, you've
Mm-hmm.
got it.
Oh yeah, and with that in mind, I know that the prototypes are meant to be fairly light. I mean, Bloodlines is only about 24 pages, for instance. But do you see each of the prototype games being about 20 pages each, give or
Somewhere
take?
between 20 and 28, I would imagine.
Hmm.
Era Friction, the prototype, was a little shorter. Era
Hmm.
Bloodlines, Era Dragon Song were a little longer.
Yeah.
They were 24, 28 pages. But it is a zine.
Hmm.
I'm trying to keep within the principles of Zine Quest. I think 20 pages is pretty good value for money when you're getting a game out of it. And I don't need to write every single rule because it goes alongside the free Era D10 Fundamentals rulebook. So everyone can get the Fundamentals rulebook. There's a link at the top. There's a link lower down the Kickstarter as well to the Fundamentals that you can just click on, and you can go there and get it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um. So yeah.
Hmm.
There's only one other thing I've really got to say. I mean, obviously, if you have any more questions, feel free. But
Yeah.
there's one thing that I just noticed as I was scrolling through the Kickstarter as I was making that comment. We're not going to deliver you 4 zines all at once. The whole point is to deliver you a year worth of zines.
Hmm.
Now, if that means it's 3, then we'll do one every 4 months. If it means it's 4, we'll do one every 3 months, and so on. We'll try and space them out so that you get stuff during the year and not you get 4 zines all at once and you don't know what to do.
Hmm. Yeah, that would certainly make sense.
In terms of the physical ones, I usually have a conversation with people. If you're based in the UK, then it might be worth it. If you're based in the US, it might be too expensive to get the zine to you. So it's really up to the individual. I'm happy to do the physical zines as I produce them, but I might recommend that you wait for a combined anthology issue, which I always make a combined anthology issue as well.
Yeah, and I will certainly look forward to seeing it. And at the very least for Soul Mist, since that one is funded. What do you see as the release window for that?
For Soul Mist, I would think by the end of April. There are a few caveats on that because I've got a lot going on at my day job right now. But I think probably by the end of April is very likely.
Yeah, and I could see it. And one final thing about Soul Mist that I should have brought this up earlier. When you mentioned different colored dye, I know I immediately thought of the fact that the Year Zero engine also kind of leans in that direction with the different colored dye for different sources of its dye pools. Obviously, this isn't a one-to-one, but
yeah, this is not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
The different colored dye are basically used as tokens. They don't need to be dyed.
What I was going to ask is,
here's a green token, here's a red token.
Yeah, do you have plans to give some sort of suggestions if somebody doesn't have the opportunity to do that sort of color-coded dye setup?
Yes, I am sure that I will include something in the GM section. Again, use a whiteboard and just write a letter. D, A, whatever. Or a piece of paper. Whatever works for the person. given that most people, like at level 1, don't have more than 3, maybe 4 stamina at maximum, it's quite a well-used stamina ball.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here.
I'm pretty sure I'm the source of the madness in this case.
Yes. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open.
Thank you very much.
As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Thank you.